You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta and the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley and Jake Mastroianni with you after Game 1 of the Wild Card Series, in which the Atlanta Braves, well, you knew that they were going to go in having to change their plans when it came to pitching, but one thing is true of any and every game that they have played all year, and will continue to be true of any and every game they play ever. You got to score to win, and you got to score more runs than the other guys if you want to get it done. The Braves were not able to do the former, and of course, by not doing so, couldn't do the latter either. The Padres jumped on them early for some runs and picked up a 4-0 win in this best 2 out of 3 series, and now the Braves find themselves in very familiar territory with their backs against the wall, their season on the line. It feels like we were having a similar conversation not too long ago about just getting into the postseason, but a lot to unpack from Game 1 against the Padres. We'll get into it all, the pitching decisions, the lack of offense, and of course, previewing Game 2 for the Braves and the Padres, with Atlanta needing a win to extend its season with Max Fried on the mound. Before we get to all that, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube, and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today, use the code LOCKEDONMLB, and win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 bet. Prize Picks, run your game. Well, Jake, I think that we know, and this may be the understatement of the show, and we'll get it out of the way early, there is no plan B when you don't have Chris Sale. We knew that, but it's also hard to win if you don't score runs. I can't really put this one squarely on the pitching. The Braves' bat simply outmatched, overpowered by Michael King and the Padres' bullpen.
I mean, Chris Sale could have pitched today, and the Braves very well could have still lost because, like you said, you got to score to win. So, as tough as the situation was coming into the day, and you knew it was going to be a tough game to win, it's almost a little bit disappointing because I think the pitching held up and gave the team an opportunity. But it's just that offense, which has been the story of the year. It's the reason why if they were going to miss the postseason, we said that was going to be the case. Yep. And we knew even if they did get into the postseason, it might be the reason that they can't advance. And unfortunately, just another terrible game offensively, not able to get that big hit.
Yeah, and they went up against a very good starting pitcher. We'll stipulate that. The Padres also threw to their 2 best relievers, I would say, at Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And those were 9 innings worth of frustrations for the Braves, who did have their opportunities. And ultimately, the offense could not do anything in the 7 innings against King and couldn't do anything against Adam or Suarez by the time this one came to a close in the late innings. And the Padres bullpen just came on and slammed the door. Let's start with what ended up happening on the pitching side. When last we spoke, Jake, we were thinking, what can the Braves do if they don't have Chris Sale? Who will they turn to? The answer was 21-year-old AJ Smith-Shawver, who got the call. And we can debate this some, of course. We can discuss it in hindsight, but I think you already hit the nail on the head. Chris Sale could have pitched tonight, and if he gave up 1 run, the Braves aren't going to win this game either. It was a difficult scenario to be in without Sale. Obviously, we saw the postseason roster come out. AJ Smith-Shawver, Bryce Elder, both on it. Ian Anderson left off. Charlie Morton's also on it, but we knew he wasn't going to be starting this game. But either way, the Braves tried to give themselves a few options for guys that could cover a few innings for them at some point in this series, with 2 of them, Smith-Shawver and Elder, looking like they were going to be the choice if you went the traditional route. You can also use an opener, try out a bullpen game, which ultimately this became. But I just don't know that there was really any great choice or right choice to make when you no longer had Chris Sale available.
And that was kind of my takeaway from this that I posted. I mean, we can argue and debate all day about who you think was the better of bad options. Let's just be honest. You're talking about a 21-year-old kid that's probably should still be in AA this year that got rushed up to the big leagues. You're talking about a guy in Bryce Elder who's had his struggles and ups and downs and got, blasted at the postseason last year. Or you're talking about a guy in Ian Anderson who hasn't pitched in the big leagues in 2 years. So yep. The options weren't great. And again, we can sit here and debate them all year. And obviously in hindsight, and you got plenty of people telling me, Ian Anderson should have started. Look, that's the guy I said probably should have, just because maybe you do recapture some of that postseason magic that he had before. But again, it's not like I felt confident in that selection. It's not like I felt like it was going to be great. You were going to have to throw somebody to try to give you some of these innings. And maybe in hindsight, they should have just gone with a bullpen game. Maybe they should have started an Aaron Bummer or a Dylan Lee, knowing that the Padres struggle against lefties, and then just see how the game goes from there. But again, it all comes back to the fact you don't score a run, you're not going to win anyway. Yeah. But again, we can debate, who they should have started, who should have gotten those innings, but it weren't great options either way you went.
No, it wasn't. Brian Snitker saying during an in-game interview, which, by the way, those are just terrific. This may have been the one that I got the most out of, though, was that they were trying to get through 13 hitters with AJ Smith-Shawver. Obviously, the results in the first two hitters were not particularly good. The two-run homer by Fernando Tatis put the Padres on top to stay. They added a third run in the second inning. Short hook, short leash, obviously, for Smith-Shawver as well. You knew he wasn't going to be asked to go out there and throw 4, 5, 6 innings in all likelihood. That was going to be a tough ask for any of the pitchers that they brought up from Gwinnett, who have not thrown and made a start in over a week now since their season ended. And then you get to the curious case of Ian Anderson, by which it would have been a great story. And look, I've known Ian for a long time. I think it would have been, had he been able to recapture that magic, catch lightning in a bottle, a terrific story. But I just don't see any way that you could comfortably bank on that. A year spent rehabbing, made 14 starts, hasn't really regained the pre-Tommy John velocity either, still has his own issues when it comes to a few free passes here and there. But I think we're doing ourselves a disservice and probably the viewers a disservice by arguing about who started this game, because it all comes down to when you don't score, not if, but when you don't score, you do not win.
And I wonder if the Braves, because AJ Smith-Shawver's velocity was down a good bit in this start, and I didn't watch his last couple of outings at Gwinnett. And I don't, again, maybe that's where he's been, but we're used to seeing, especially if it's going to be a short outing, seeing AJ Smith-Shawver just kind of air it out. I mean, 97, 98, 99. He averaged 95 in this one. And again, I wonder if the Braves knew that going in, and maybe that change would have changed their plans at all. But it certainly didn't look like the AJ Smith-Shawver that we're capable of seeing, that has that big time stuff that maybe you thought could give you some upside in this outing. So again, maybe he just wasn't fully there. I don't know the case, but he just didn't seem to have that zip on the fastball that we're used to seeing.
Here's the thing I noticed was that the first couple of hitters, that fastball was routinely 93, 94 miles an hour. Tatis, I think, going on a fastball right down the pipe that was maybe 94, maybe just above, maybe just below. I don't remember which one. And then all of a sudden on the third hitter, you start seeing 96, 97. He hit 98 twice, and I believe it was, 29 pitches that he threw in this game. It wasn't very many either way, but he did hit the 98 miles an hour. I don't know what the difference was in those couple of pitches and the handfuls of 95s and 96s that were around once he got going. Maybe he just wasn't all the way loose. Maybe the adrenaline wasn't there. Maybe he was trying to kind of tamp things down so that he could control things a little bit more, but he just didn't have it working early on. And the Padres, as you pointed out, they may struggle against lefties. They do not have the same problem against righties. And for somebody who's had as little experience at the big league level as AJ Smith-Shawver has, I guess the Braves just kind of looked at it as maybe he was their best of the non-ideal options that they had to start this game. And I don't know. I think we've probably spent as good a portion of time as we can on it for now. We'll stick a pin in it and obviously get into it later, but we have to talk about the offense for Atlanta, this lineup, which hasn't exactly been a machine this season, and certainly not recently in the run-up to the postseason, struggled against Michael King, who you have to give a lot of credit to because he was as advertised. 7 innings, shutout ball, 12 strikeouts. This guy, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again, maybe people haven't talked about him enough as far as the top starters in the National League.
He was really good. I mean, he was excellent on this night, that sinker. I mean, there's just so much movement on all of his pitches. It's really incredible to watch. I saw your post about the umpire cam, and I agree with you on live. I don't need to see that.
Right.
But they showed the one umpire cam on a pitch that Ozzie swung at, a sweeper. I don't know how you hit baseballs. I mean, that looked like a fastball right down the middle, and then it broke a foot or two off the plate. It's truly incredible what he was able to do. All that said, Braves had opportunities.
Yes.
They had, especially early in the game, the first inning and the third inning, you had a couple of runners on, and you just couldn't get that hit. And that's the problem with this offense, especially facing a good pitcher who doesn't give up a lot of home runs, 0.88 home run per 9 on the season. You're not going to be able to string 2, 3, 4 hits together in an inning just to score 1 run. And that's what it was going to take for this Braves team to get anything going, because he wasn't walking anybody either. The Braves weren't taking pitches to be able to walk in this one. And you were going to have to do that. You were going to have to string together 3, 4 hits in an inning. And you just can't do that against a guy like Michael King with the stuff that he has.
No, he's a tremendous pitcher, and that's part of the issue. The Braves, so they did have some opportunities. Michael Harris reached base a couple of times, stole a base in this one. You saw him get on the move. You saw Ozzie Albies get on the move a little bit later in the game. So the Braves were trying to, as much as they could, get some runners in scoring position. But once again, hitless in those opportunities, 0 for 5, and left 7 men on base. And that's not the worst that we've seen from a Braves club this year, but it's more of the same, to your point. And on a night in which they get shut out, but still out hit the Padres, it's just one of the many familiar frustrations of the 2024 Braves. Now, putting that aside, and we will get back to it later, it's a short series. You can't dwell on this loss. The Braves learned that yesterday inside of their doubleheader against the New York Mets. They had to put it aside and get back on the horse. And Max Fried, Reynaldo Lopez, the next two games. And right now it's win game 2 and live to play another day. That's what the Braves are going to have to focus on as they move forward in this best 2 out of 3 wild card format.
And, obviously the guys on the mound that you want in these next 2 games to give you a chance, but, all comes back to the offense. What are they going to be able to do? Because the Padres still got some really good pitchers left on their side, but you feel pretty good again with the guys you have on the mound to at least give you a chance once again in these next 2 games, if the offense can get it done and help out.
Well, much more to get to, and maybe much more of the same here on the Braves postcast as we talk about what the pitching was able to do, how the plan may could have been better, but how ultimately it gets canceled out by a night that you get shut out by the San Diego Padres. We'll talk about game 2 a bit and what the Braves need to see. And a spoiler alert, it's a win with Max Fried on the mound on Wednesday. We'll get to all of that and more as the Braves postcast continues. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use that code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineups. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's take a look at a very unhappy box score for the Atlanta Braves in their first taste of the postseason here in 2024. But familiar feeling from this club as Atlanta, despite out-hitting the Padres, as I just mentioned, shut out on 7 hits, no errors. They left 7 men on base. Padres, 4 runs on 5 hits, 3 of those coming in the first 2 innings, no errors, and only 1 man left on base. And in fact, they didn't have a runner in scoring position all night long, unless you count Fernando Tatis, who was in scoring position at home plate, and I guess Kyle Higashioka, who was also at scoring position from home plate in the 8th inning. But yeah, it was just one of those days for this Atlanta offense. The winner is Michael King, and again, he was terrific in this one. 7 shutout innings, 12 strikeouts, no walks, 5 hits allowed as he faced 26 batters in this one. AJ Smith-Shawver suffers a loss. He allowed 3 runs on 4 hits, 1 strikeout, 1 home run allowed, faced just 9 batters in taking that defeat. We'll talk a little bit about the Braves bullpen in just a moment because that was a definite highlight in this game for a couple of different reasons that I'll get to. But I want to go back to this. There was no good plan B for Chris Sale. Braves hoped to get 13 hitters from AJ Smith-Shawver, then go into their bullpen depending on where they were. A lot of this all was going to hinge on, I would imagine, what the score was in terms of who they were going to use. If there was a bright spot in this one, they didn't have to run through some of their high leverage arms who were very busy on Monday and over the weekend. They were able to get through the next 6 2/3 innings with just 3 relievers. That's a plus. But let's go back to AJ Smith-Shawver. Fastball, as we talked about, was very inconsistent. He topped it out around 98 miles an hour, but those early ones, particularly the hittable fastball right in the zone to Fernando Tatis, that is probably one of the many places that he would like to see a fastball, and he put it well out over the left field wall to put the Padres ahead to stay 2 batters into the bottom of the first inning.
I mean, game over. I mean, essentially with the way things have played out, it's 2 batters into the game for the Padres and it's game over. You mentioned a good point though about AJ Smith-Shawver and the velocity ticking up kind of as he went on. He hadn't pitched in over a week. And that's going to be the case for anybody coming up for Gwinnett as their season's been over for a little while, but you do wonder, and he didn't find out he was starting today until 2 p.m. Now he's on the flight over there. He has to know he's a potential guy to start, but you do just wonder if that factors into it a little bit. If maybe it just, he hadn't pitched in a while and just taking him a while to get up to it. But I mean, that was the hope for me, at least when I saw AJ Smith-Shawver pitching, is maybe he can get you through the lineup once or twice. Maybe he can get you with that high velo and just kind of air it out for a couple of innings and play. I thought the slider was his best pitch. He only threw it once. His second best pitch, he only threw it once in this one. I know that changeup has been a pitch he's worked on a lot this year and looked really good back in spring training, but he only threw one slider. And that was his thing coming up, was the fastball slider combination. So again, not having the fastball velo, not being able to, I guess, to have that slider, a pitch that he could go to, and maybe it was just a matchup, so they feel like it wasn't a good pitch for him to throw. He just didn't have it. And it's unfortunate because, the Braves had a chance. The bullpen was able to keep them in it. And like I said, the game's two batters in, and the game's essentially over because the offense couldn't get anything going.
And I'll say this about AJ Smith-Shawver. I mean, he didn't throw very many sliders, as you pointed out. And one of the reasons that's a swing and miss pitch that's not necessarily meant to be thrown in the zone. I mean, you can throw it for strikes some as well, try to locate it, dot the corners and what have you. But everything for a fastball slider combo pitcher is going to build off of fastball command and the ability to, change the hitter's eye level, as the saying goes. And, this was a fastball that was flat and hittable, especially early on, and particularly the one to Tatis. And without that high velocity that you talked about, it's not going to be as effective. So it was almost like AJ was never really able to get down the tracks enough to where he could even employ a weapon like that and throw it a lot, because otherwise the Padres could just kind of spit on it and just allow it to be outside of the strike zone. That may not be the explanation everybody's looking for, but that's kind of how I read that situation. How would you size that up?
Well,
because it feels like the secondaries, he's going to need them to get through the lineup, but if you don't have a good fastball velocity or command, you kind of sunk.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right with any fastball slider guy, even Spencer Strider. You got to be able to have that high velocity fastball, and you got to be able to locate it and play off of that. It still felt, it's his best secondary. If you're going to throw any, why not throw that one? Yeah. But the other thing about this Padres team, they don't strike out, and they're not going to chase those pitches out of the zone. So they struck out the fewest times of anybody in Major League Baseball this year. So they're not going to chase. You're going to be able to have to locate some of those pitches in the zone to be able to get them to swing and hopefully get weak contact. But yeah, I mean, as we started off talking, it all goes back to that fastball, not having that velocity, not having that command of it. You really can't do much else.
It does, and it's not to lay it all at the feet of AJ Smith-Shawver. Right. This was a tall order. This was a big ask for him. It would have been a big ask for Bryce Elder, and probably the biggest ask of all for Ian Anderson, who I know was a very popular talking point, myself included. I mean, I would love to see that story if it were to play out that way, but I think the realistic expectations for him is 2 years since throwing a big league game and throwing him right back into the fire in the postseason. That's probably just not a bridge that the Braves wanted to cross, at least not yet. And I don't know that it would have necessarily given him much margin for error, considering, as we talked about, the Braves got shut out. Now, Aaron Bummer with 2 2/3 innings. Jesse Chavez, 2 innings of a hitless ball for each of those guys. Luke Jackson did allow a late solo homer, but 2 innings for him. If you were to tell me that the Braves bullpen would stay away from Raisel Iglesias, Joe Jimenez, Dylan Lee, Pierce Johnson, and the likes, and be able to get 6 2/3 innings of one-run ball, I would sign up for that every single day of the week. And twice on Monday, as the case was for the doubleheader, if that was what it took. Those 3 guys, I think, did help the Braves in a lot of ways reset after this doubleheader, which gives you a lot more latitude. Should Max Fried need some backup on Wednesday in game 2, or Reynaldo Lopez, if they can push it to game 3, this does kind of help the bullpen at least a bit, I feel like, and that may be the most silver of silver linings that you're going to find from this game.
Yeah, not many great takeaways from this one, but what the job that they were able to do, like you said, it kind of resets after playing the doubleheader on Monday. And not only did they, pick up those innings and help your bullpen reset, they kept you in the ball game. Yeah. I mean, it was, they did a great job. And obviously it's in hindsight now, as I talked about earlier, but maybe you would have been better off starting an Aaron Bummer or a Dylan Lee, seeing what he was able to do in this game. But either way, great job by the bullpen, like you said, giving you a chance. You knew this was going to be a tough game, and it's even tougher when you can't score. But to be able to cover those innings, give you at least a chance to stay in the game, and then have your other guys ready to go for you. Yeah, that could end up being huge depending on how this series plays out.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Michael King. Again, shutout ball, 5 hits, 7 innings, 12 strikeouts. Atlanta's offense completely overmatched. 15 strikeouts, hitless with runners in scoring position in this game. 0 for 5 ultimately, left 7 men on base. They had their opportunities. They were unable to just kind of, even if you just chip away a little bit in the game, maybe that starts to put King on the ropes. And in the postseason, even if you're rolling along, you get a couple of base runners on in a 2-run game or a 3-run game, all of a sudden tying runs coming to the plate, and maybe the manager wants to start playing the matchups. You just never know what could happen, but it seemed like any time that the Braves got something going, King was able to snuff it out immediately and get right back to that Padres dugout. He was, again, magnificent in this one. And you had Jason Adam come on. And then Robert Suarez also able to close things out against the Braves. That dude throws 100 miles an hour. He doesn't necessarily rack up strikeouts, but you can see why he was one of the better closers in the National League this year as well.
Yeah, he's kind of similar to Raisel Iglesias. Raisel doesn't have 100 in his back pocket, but not necessarily a big strikeout guy. Just has really good stuff and can get that weak contact. But as for the offense, 3 of the first 4 innings, you had a runner in scoring position.
Yeah.
And I get you can't come through in every situation like that, but you come through once, you come through twice, and you put a runner on the board and you scratch back and you claw back. Maybe it pushes up Michael King's pitch count a little bit.
Exactly.
You get him out of there. I mean, all that stuff kind of adds up. And I think you said earlier Michael Harris ran in this one. I don't think he did. I think it was just Ozzie later in the game. But if Michael Harris were to have run early in that game and you had hits that followed it up, assuming everything stays the same, you might have scored a run early on. So, again, it's just those little things. Again, when you're not going to get those home runs and you're facing a guy that doesn't give up a lot of home runs and in a ballpark that doesn't give up a lot of home runs, although the Padres proved that wrong. Again, it's just those little things. If you could have got something in one of those first 4 innings just to kind of, snap back a little bit, maybe it gives you a little momentum. I don't know. Maybe nothing's different, but certainly they had some of those opportunities in those first 4 innings, but just couldn't get a hit.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a fever dream or what, where I was thinking about Michael Harris running in this one. Did he steal a base in the doubleheader yesterday? And maybe that was what I was thinking of. Maybe not.
I think it was.
Maybe I just.
But Ozzie did run later, and that was great
yeah.
to see. I need to see more of that, though. You're going to have to try other ways to manufacture some runs here.
Yeah, Harris was on base twice, though. I didn't imagine that. That's actually in living color, in black and white on this box score. However, no runs scored for him in this one. A hit for Ozzie Albies, Marcell Ozuna, Matt Olson, and Jorge Soler in this game as well. A double for Travis d'Arnaud, and that added up to 7 hits for the Braves, who did not draw a walk in this game. So not only did they punch out 15 times, the Padres didn't give them any extra fuel to throw on the fire for the Braves offense to really put their pitchers in the kind of jeopardy that can lead to a short hook or a quick hook in the postseason format. Be that as it may, the Braves offense struggling, and a 4-0 loss to the San Diego Padres means that it's do or die time on Wednesday with Max Fried on the mound. We'll talk a little bit more about that and get you that starting pitching matchup and preview that game as the Braves postcast continues. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Well, Jake, let's talk a little bit about Game 2 of this series. And again, it's best 2 out of 3. The Braves have taken 2 out of 3 from the Padres this very calendar year. It happened right before the All-Star break, if memory serves. Atlanta has now played 4 games against, 3 different teams now in a little bit over 48 hours. And they're right back to work on Wednesday, needing a win to keep their season alive. They had to cobble things together in Game 1 and hope for the best. San Diego jumped on them early. In the short series, as I talked about a little while ago, the Braves are going to have to be resilient. And if they weren't that this year, honestly, they wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I mean, everything that they've gone through and everybody's talked about it just to get to this point. Look, it's a different feeling than it has been the last 2 years where you came in and you were expecting to win a World Series. This year, it's kind of going back to that 2018 style where you're just kind of happy to be here. Certainly, you want to play your best and you got a chance, but obviously the Braves have gone through a lot this season, and it's a credit to those players and the coaching staff that they even have this opportunity. And look, you knew Game 1 was going to be tough to win. And you knew coming out of that, you were going to have Max Fried on the mound ready to go and potentially Ronaldo Lopez. That was going to be your best scenario for winning this series, is winning the next 2. And so you're going to have to bounce back now. Obviously, there is no margin for error. You can't lose again here. So you're going to have to play much better baseball than you played on Tuesday.
Yeah, in the words of Apollo Creed in Rocky III, there is no tomorrow if the Braves do not win behind Max Fried on Wednesday. We'll get to the pitching matchup in a moment, but as we've talked about quite a bit on this show already, this matchup was always going to hinge on Atlanta's offense doing enough to compete with the Padres. They're not necessarily going to be able to go blow for blow against this San Diego offense, which can be explosive and has the kind of hitters that had the kind of years that would put them in October. It had them pressing the Dodgers for a little bit of a pennant race right down the stretch in the final, 7 or 10 days of the season itself before settling into this wild card role. But not only do they have the strong offense, the Padres also have a very capable pitching staff. We saw a little bit of that in game one, could see more of it in game two as well. Max Fried is going to have to give the same kind of effort he did against Kansas City with his near complete game in his last start at Truist Park. Fried, who was drafted by the Padres and traded to Atlanta at the start of the rebuild, he gets a chance to do something special against his old club at Petco Park.
Could be his last start in a Braves uniform. Obviously, that's going to be the case anytime he takes the mound now. We talked about it a little bit, the fact that the Padres have struggled more so against lefties this year. They're 19th in OPS against left-handed pitchers this season. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of advantage with Max Fried on the mound. Although when they faced Max Fried earlier in the year, he gave up 9 hits and 3 walks over 4 and a third innings. So they did get to him earlier this season. But there's, other than maybe a healthy Chris Sale, there's not anybody else on this team that I would want pitching in an elimination game like this than Max Fried, a guy that's delivered for you many times before. His last outing, was just tremendous. 1 out away from his second complete game shutout of the year. We know what Max Fried can do when he's on. I mentioned the fact that the Padres don't strike out. They had the fewest strikeouts in baseball. Yeah. Max Fried's somebody, he's not dependent on that strikeout. He is looking for that weak contact. So hopefully that plays into his hand a little bit. Of course, you're going to need some good batted ball luck behind him and some good defense, but he's somebody that isn't as reliant on getting those swing and miss. He's more looking to get that weak contact. So, again, I love having Max Fried here in an elimination game. He's going to put it all on the line, possibly his last start in a Braves uniform. Can't wait to see what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, he may be the perfect kind of pitcher to go up against a lineup that does not punch out a lot. You're absolutely right. And with the weak contact that he can generate, even though the Padres obviously made him work very hard in that previous meeting, Fried has been capable of, navigating a lineup without being dependent on looking like Michael King on this night, who punched out 12 guys in 7 innings. You'll take 7 scoreless, however that looks. You'd love that for Max Fried, but the point that we continue to come back to is, can the Braves string some things together and get some rallies going and keep and sustain some rallies and have some base hits that they very much need? Doesn't have to be home runs, but base hits, sacrifice flies, whatever it may be that can get things moving against Joe Musgrove. The righty is going to be on the mound for the San Diego Padres. He's 6-5, 3.88 ERA. Missed a little bit of time this year. They had a couple of starters that did, but it didn't necessarily obviously curb the Padres and keep them from being able to reach their ultimate goal of getting into the postseason. And if you can say anything for the Padres, Jake, as well, I mean, you can say a lot of nice things about them because there's many reasons why they're here, but they also got healthy and started playing their best baseball at the right time heading into October.
Yeah, they had the best record in all of baseball after the All-Star break. This is a team that's been really hot. Their pitching staff has gotten healthy, including Joe Musgrove, who's been really good at 2.15 ERA in his last 9 starts. So this is why he's getting the game 2 start, because he's been really good for them in the second half of the season. He's not necessarily a strikeout pitcher, though. Of course, against this Braves lineup, he may be. We'll see. But hopefully it's an opportunity for the Braves to put the ball in play, get some good batted ball luck, and maybe puts a few runs on the board. But yeah, I mean, this Padres team, we've talked about it. They're really good. They have a very deep lineup, a very well-rounded lineup, guys that can put the ball in play, have some power, as we saw, a great and deep bullpen. And this pitching staff has just been really, really good. Michael King's excellent. Joe Musgrove, as I mentioned, has been great in the second half. It's always going to be a tough challenge for the Braves. But again, you feel good with your guy on the mound if your offense can just give you a little bit of help.
Yeah, it'll be lefty Max Fried was 11-10 with a 3.25 ERA on the year for the Braves against righty Joe Musgrove of San Diego, 6-5 with a 3.88 in a wild card series game 2 at Petco Park. 8:38 p.m. Eastern time, the first pitch for the second contest, just like the first. The Braves, though, are hoping to have a very different result and keep their season going behind Max Fried, who, as Jake mentioned, could be making his final start in a Braves uniform. One of the many storylines and many things going on in this one for the Atlanta Braves, who would very much like to push their 2024 as far as it can go and hope that extends beyond Wednesday. Braves and Padres, though, in game 2 of this series happening on Wednesday. That brings us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Leave us those likes and comments, share the show with a friend, and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Once again, game 1 does not go the Braves' way. 4-0, the Padres take it. They need one more win to advance to the division series. Braves need a win to keep their season alive. We'll be back with you after that game. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time. And until then, so long, everyone.